"Where the hell were you?" she cried, moving towards me like an angry bull. She grabbed me by the shoulders and tried to look in my eyes, but I refused to meet them. "Just out for a walk," I said. "You were meeting that girl, weren't you? You know we can't trust them." I pulled away from my mom, and she stepped back, surprised. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. "She's my friend, my only friend." "I thought I was your friend," she returned, her voice dropping. I paused. "Friends don't keep secrets from each other. You don't tell me anything." Mom looked at the ground. I could see the thoughts racing through her head. She was considering something. "Why do we have to stay here? Why can't I have friends? Why can't I go to school? Why do I have to wear a mask?" Mom bit her lip, and her eyes met mine. They were red and ready to break with tears. I waited for an answer, hoping she'd finally decided to share something with me. She gripped her fists, then released them. She sighed and started back to the cabin, leaving me where I was standing. "Keep playing with her if you want. Just keep your mask on." Another year or so passed. I was still frustrated with my mom for not sharing more information with me, but I was happy I didn't have to sneak out to meet Jamie. We even started meeting in the daylight, making it much easier to explore the woods together. I showed her all the things I'd learned over the years, about how to identify poisonous plants, how to find your way home if you got lost, and how to track animals. "Wow, you know a lot about the woods," she said. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I shrugged. "Will you teach me how to shoot a bow and arrow?" Mom had just taught me, so I wasn't sure how well I could teach her. However, the pleas in her eyes kept me from saying no. We found a spot near a clearing in the woods where my mom would often hunt for quails. We ducked behind a log, and I set up the bow and arrow on top of it. A small flock of quail bobbed in and out of the tall grass. I picked a large one closer to us than the rest and aimed the arrow just as Mom had taught me. The quail bobbed again, and I took a deep breath before letting the arrow go. The flock flew into the air, leaving the arrow on the ground pointed towards the sky. We walked to the clearing and found the quail struck through its chest with the arrow. "That was amazing!" she cried. "I want to try." It was the first animal I'd ever killed on my own, and I loved that Jamie was here to see it. It made me realize that I wanted her there for all the big moments in my life.
We went back to the log with my quail and hid. An hour or so passed before the flock returned and started picking at seeds and insects on the ground. I handed Jamie the bow and arrow. "What do I do?" she asked, holding the bow and arrow at her sides. "You have to show me, silly." I awkwardly moved towards her and placed my arms around her shoulders. I lifted her arm with the arrow, then the one with the bow. I positioned them in the right spots, slowly. Her hair smelled like sweat and dirt, but I liked it. You have to aim and take a breath before shooting," I said. "You need to make sure you're completely relaxing, and taking a breath helps." "Okay," she said. "How far do I pull the string back?" I gulped before putting my hand over hers. She breathed quickly as if I scared her, but quickly settled into my arms. I cupped my hand around hers and pulled the string back. She looked at me and smiled. "I think I got it," she said. I moved away as I noticed my heart beating harder than it ever had. She aimed the arrow and took a breath. She let it go, and the flock flew away. We both watched the arrow for a moment and saw it move. We ran to it and saw the quail shot in the side. I pulled the arrow out and the tiny bird struggled to move away from us. "Oh no," she said. I could see her starting to cry. "It's okay," I said, picking up the quail and holding it between us. "Do you think we can help?" Before she could finish her thought, I twisted the bird's neck and it went limp. I held it to him and she stared at me wide-eyed. I cocked my head at her, but she looked away. "It's okay, you can keep it," she said. We spent the rest of that day at a clearing close to her campsite. She poked at rocks with her pocket knife and stared at the forest, not saying anything. I was about to ask her what was wrong when she dropped her head and began sobbing. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked back up, then to me. "I want to go home." I dropped my head. "I know my dad is hiding me from my mum," she said. "He picked me up from school one day and told me we were going on a fun trip and that we'd go home soon." I believed him for a long time, but I'm not a stupid kid anymore. I miss my mom. I miss my old friends.
I know she didn't mean to make me feel bad, but hearing all this hurt. I thought she was happy out here with me, that all we needed was each other. "I want to leave," she said, "and I want you to go with me." I sat back. "What? I can't leave." She pursed her lips and set her head on her knees. "Why do you wear that mask?" "I have to." "Because your mom says." I paused, then nodded. "Your mom's lying just like my dad is. I bet you $1 million nothing will happen if you take off your mask right now." She moved her hand towards me and gripped the neck of the mask. I pulled back and she let go. She paused and tried again, and this time I allowed her to untie the twine. Everything seemed to move in slow motion as she gently pulled upwards on the mask, careful to avoid yanking too hard around my nose and eyes. Everything went black as the last bit of the mask traveled up my face, but then Jamie's smiling face greeted me with the sun behind it. We stared at each other for several moments. "See? Nothing," she said. "And you don't have any hideous scars or anything." "Really?" I asked. She shook her head, then leaned in, kissing me on the lips. My eyes widened in surprise for a moment, but I quickly relaxed as it felt right. Perfect. She pulled away and smiled again. My smile was so big my cheeks started to hurt. "Let's leave, tonight," she said. "Tonight?" "Yes. I can grab food and stuff to last us a while, and you can use your forest knowledge to lead us back to the road. Some adults will have to pick up some kids they see on the side of the road. I'll tell them where my mom lives, and we can go back there." "Your mom would let me stay?" I asked. "Yes, of course." She stood up and offered her hand to me. I took it and pulled myself up. "Meet me here when the moon is in the center of the sky," she said.
1,000 thoughts went through my mind as I stood there, holding Jamie's hand. I wondered if this was really a good idea, if my mum would be okay without me, if I was ready to leave the woods. But I knew I could do all of it as long as I was with Jamie. I nodded. She started out of the clearing with me a few feet behind her. She paused, causing me to stop. She stood still for several seconds with her arms at her sides, the pocket knife in her hand shaking. "Jamie," I asked, "are you okay?" She turned to me with wide eyes and her mouth clenched. "Jamie." I moved towards her, but she lifted the knife. I stood frozen as she moved it towards her head, holding it a few inches from her cheek. "Ja!" She stuck the knife deep in her face, and I screamed. She pulled against the handle, dragging the blade along her face. I ran to stop her, but a kick to my stomach sent me to the ground. Jamie continued cutting her face, dragging it along her forehead and down to her ears. I leapt up to stop her again, but again and again she managed to keep me away while continuing to slice her flesh. "Jamie!" cried a voice from the woods. Monty distracted me for a moment as he came running into the clearing from behind me. I heard a scream, he said while approaching, and noticed the knife in Jamie's face and the blood running down her neck. "Jamie!" he cried. He ran quickly towards her, glancing at me along the way. He paused a few feet behind me, and I stood between the two of them as the horrible sounds of Jamie's knife still working down her face filled my ears and made my legs immobile. Monty stared blank-faced at me for a moment, then dug into his pocket without looking down. He pulled out a much larger knife than Jamie's and stuck it into his own cheek, starting to cut along the same pattern she had. I clocked the silence from behind me and turned. I didn't want to see what Jamie had done, but I couldn't stop myself. My brain wanted to leave as quickly as I could, but something buried deep told me to look. I looked upon a bloody mess of musculature. Her eyelids were still there, though she didn't blink. Her nose was gone, as were her lips, revealing 2 rows of small teeth. The sounds of Monty continuing to slice sounded behind me as my eyes travelled down Jamie's body. At her side, I saw what was left of her face. She lifted her arm and held it up to me. It looked like her. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. Instead, I ran. I ran as fast as I could back to the cabin, pulling my mask back over my face along the way. Mom was peeling the husks from some corn when I ran into the yard. I stumbled to the ground, and she ran over. The inside of my mask was soaked with tears, and I was having trouble breathing in it. "Nestor, what's wrong?" she asked, kneeling in front of me. Her fingers drifted to the untied twine at the bottom of my neck. "Oh no," she said. Did she see your face?" "They're still alive," I said. "We can take them out of the woods." "It's too late for them, son. I'm sorry." I cried violently for another few moments, then looked at my mom. "When you said something bad would happen if someone saw my face, you didn't mean something bad would happen to me, did you?" I sat in the kitchen while Mom brought me a cool glass of water. I could tell she was stalling, but I didn't care. Everything was wrong, and nothing she said would make it better. She sat in front of me and grabbed my hand. "I didn't want to tell you. I hoped I would never have to." She looked from side to side, then at me. "In the town I grew up in, this small place on the other side of the woods, there were stories of things in the forest. Things that only showed themselves when they wanted to be seen. Spirits, ghosts, monsters. Natives had a name for this particular brand of spirits that I can't remember," she continued. "Us in town always just called them face stealers." My heart stopped beating for a moment. "Folks said if you looked at their faces, they would take yours. All us kids figured they were just stories meant to keep us from wandering too far into the woods." "That's what adults do, right? Tell kids fibs to keep them from getting hurt?" "That's what I learned to do, Nestor, and I'm wondering if it was right. I'm wondering if I should have just told you this stuff from the beginning." She sighed. I wanted to say something, but my mind couldn't find the words. I went most of my life believing that there was no such thing as magic, and things were only the way you saw them, Mom said, before pausing and looking at me. One day, I was walking in the woods, just trying to clear my head. I might have wandered farther than I should have, but I grew up around the trees. I knew how to find my way back.
As I was fixing to turn around, I noticed a man a few yards away from me, off the trail. I didn't think nothing of it at first, figured he was out hunting or something like that, but when he turned to me, his face was missing, cut clean off, took everything except his teeth and ears. My hands started to shake. I didn't want to believe anything she was saying, but the image of Jamie's skinless face refused to leave my head. I started walking backwards, thinking this man must have lost his mind, but it started to occur to me that maybe all those stories I thought were bullshit actually had some truth to them. She looked at me, then away. It was the first time I'd ever heard her curse. I kept moving away from the man when I saw this small body facing away from me, a few yards away off the trail. A kid, no older than 2 or 3, completely naked in the woods by themselves. I walked towards them, thinking they might be in danger from the man. Then I saw it. A clump of skin on the ground in a pile, like some fucked up anthill. The holes for his eyes were the only thing I saw before turning away. I didn't know what to do. I thought about just leaving you out there, but then you started to cry, a painful cry that broke my heart. I couldn't have kids of my own, but she swallowed her saliva. I wrapped my outside shirt over your head and picked you up, and when you wrapped your tiny arms around my neck, I knew that I had to protect you. So I just kept walking deeper and deeper into the woods, not knowing what to do, but hoping I'd figure it out along the way. She answered the first question I had without me having to say anything. "I don't know who left you there or why," she said. "I wondered if your real parents would ever come looking for you, and maybe that's partly why I wanted us to stay as hidden as we could." Her eyes drifted to me. There was a long, heavy silence. "Nestor," she started, "I don't want to ask, son, but I think I have to. When your friend did what she did you like it?" Of course I didn't like it, I thought, as I wandered back through the woods. I didn't have time to examine my emotions at the moment, though. I thought I was terrified, but had I confused excitement for terror? The sun was beginning to set when I made it to the spot where Jamie and Monty lay. They were both on their backs, their bodies still against the bright green grass. I warily approached, not wanting to see what had become of their faces, but unable to stop myself. I stopped just shy of their bodies and noticed something on the ground. A small mound of pink flesh stared back at me, and I knew it was her face. I didn't move for a few moments, my stomach turning at the idea of what her face might look like detached from her body. Still, I moved towards it, seeing a few insects had begun to pick away at the flesh.
I picked it up, dusting the small creatures away while feeling the softness of the flesh between my fingers. As the stinky blood coated my palms, I felt the side of my mouth begin to curl into a smile. I gasped and dropped Jamie's face before running away from the scene, wiping the blood from my hands onto my pants. I sat in my room staring at the wall for a long time. My body still buzzed from the feeling of Jamie's face between my fingers. The fear and sickness had all disappeared, instead replaced with an elation I'd never experienced. My body felt light, and the constant fear and anxiety that usually filled my brain had gone away. I felt confident and more intelligent, though it seemed impossible at the time. I sat with the feeling, not wanting it to leave. However, when it did, I felt worse than I ever had. A dark cloud seemed to surround my head as my body felt heavy and bound to the space around me. The realization that I would never see my best friend again came rushing into me, and the guilt of knowing that I had caused her death made me wish I were the one lying lifeless in the grass instead of her. I cried for the next few hours until it felt like I had no tears left. My mom had come by to check on me several times but avoided coming into my room. "Just let me know if you need something, okay?" she asked once. I heard her move to her room and shut the door. She never closed her room at night before that day. I could tell there was something different about her, and it became more evident over the next few days. She no longer walked around the house like an authority figure, but more like someone trying to avoid eye contact with a mean dog. She never brought up the incident again, and I was thankful for it. The guilt of killing Jamie never went away, though neither did the remembrance of that ecstasy I experienced afterwards. It created a temptation in me to go out and find someone else to whom I could show my face. It became a regular craving. Usually it was more like one might crave sugar after going a long time without any, but some nights it was almost comparable to starvation. It became so bad that one day I saw my mom working outside, busy and distracted with chores. I approached from behind and started removing my mask without thinking. My mom heard me approach and spun around, dropping the garden hose she'd been using. The look of fear in her face, the woman who'd ensured my survival, who'd loved me despite knowing I was a monster. Seeing her that terrified of me, it almost hurt worse than Jamie. Mom slept with a chair against her door that night and for most nights after. While she was sleeping one night, I snuck into her craft room, spotting a large needle she used on leather. I grabbed it, taking a thick roll of twine as well. Jamie's face flashed in my mind. First, her face the first time I'd met her, followed by the last time. I knew it was horrible, but my emotions and my brain weren't matching, and at the time I felt like my brain was right. If the cravings weren't going to stop, then I needed to prevent my mask from ever coming off again. I took the needle and twine and held them to my neck for a moment before taking a deep breath. The needle punctured my skin, then the mask leather. I cringed as the twine slid through my flesh and felt every centimeter of its rough edges scraping the inside of my skin. Lines of crimson fell from every puncture in my neck. The harsh stinging I'd felt when I first punctured my skin had become a dull pain. For the first time in my life, the mask felt warm and comforting. I breathed in its leathery smell before lying back on my bed, thankful I'd never hurt anyone like I'd hurt Jamie. My bed is much more comfortable these days. I invested in a weighted blanket and a goose-down pillow, and you truly can tell the difference. In a month, it'll be 10 years since I left the woods. Mom died a year prior, and being out there by myself, well, it was lonelier than I can describe, though on some nights I would give a lot of money for the peace and quiet of the woods. My apartment overlooks a bustling downtown area, and while the view is amazing, the noise of the city can be a bit overwhelming at times. Thank God for the noise-canceling headphones my ex-girlfriend gifted me for Christmas last year. Though it's my day off, I decide to do some cleaning. I never got around to hiring a new cleaner, and the place has become a bit of a sty. I go to the bathroom and look in the mirror for a moment, seeing my night mask staring back at me. It's more lucid than any of the masks I had growing up, but thick enough from preventing me from seeing my actual face. This mask is milky white and made of a thin plastic. It only covers my face, leaving my hair, ears, and neck visible. The scars where I'd sewn that old mask on became a pale white over the years. No one ever asked them, though. There were only a few people who've ever seen me with my shirt off. Lining the bathroom counter are several other masks, ones I made myself from materials I've collected over the years. I've been perfecting them since leaving the woods. I was able to get away with crude masks for a while, using the excuse of having bad scarring. But I realized how much better it was to get close to someone before doing what I had to do, and people want something they can see, eyes that react to them, lips that move, cheeks that wrinkle when smiling. I think I've almost got my masks perfect. They contour to every crease of my face and match my skin color perfectly. Only sometimes will someone notice something off about my face. Maybe
They spot a plasticky sheen to the synthetic skin, or see makeup lines around my lips or eyes. They only make a look of concern and continue about their day, wondering if what they saw was only their imagination. I decide to clean my room first, starting with the mess of clothes in the closet. Before getting started, though, I decide to reminisce and drag out the leather box near the back corner of the closet. I place it on my bed and pull the flap open. A smile climbs up my cheeks. I've managed to preserve most of them, with the latest ones being those of my ex-girlfriend and the cleaners. There are 23 in total, but I have plans for several more, so I'm probably going to need to find a better storage system. Seeing all the empty eye sockets and jagged edges of the faces always makes me feel a slight amount of the elation I felt upon taking them. It also makes me sad, though. Sad that I didn't go back for her face before the forest took it.